Hey guys, this is Daniel from the Landmiler, and today we're going to be answering some questions about your credit score. If you're new to the channel, I discuss topics such as travel and credit cards in both the Canadian and American spaces. So if you like things like traveling in first class or business class, staying at some of the best hotels in the world, please do consider subscribing as I'll be pushing out more content in the future. Your credit score is a number that's used by banks and lenders to determine your credit worthiness. So this would be for things like a new loan, new credit card, or mortgages. And although there's no real way for us to calculate what the exact score would be, we know that there's generally made up of 5 different categories. If we look at this chart, you'll see the generic breakdown. So the largest parts of your score would be your payment history, which looks at whether or not you've missed payments or were late on them, and your utilization, which considers how much of the limit are you using. So generally speaking, you'd want to be using less of your total credit. Next, we'll have average age of credit, which is a calculation of how long you've had your credit accounts for. And then we'll have the mix of credit, so your different credit types, whether it be a credit card or a mortgage, things like that, as well as any new credit, but these only make up 10% of your score each. So next, we'll take a look at some common questions that people have about their credit. Question 1, a high credit card limit is bad. No, I don't think a high credit card limit is bad for you, just because it essentially means that the bank is trusting you with more money. And with a higher credit card limit, it actually means that your utilization would go down. So let's say if I was a lender, I'd probably say it'd be safer to lend to someone who had $10,000 credit limit and was only spending $500 or $1,000 a month versus someone who has a $500 limit and is blowing through all of that each month. However, I do think this is only if you're practicing good financial habits. A higher credit limit does not necessarily mean that you can spend more money on it. Now, we've all seen maybe one or two of our friends who are irresponsible credit users say getting that $3,000 or $5,000 credit limit and then suddenly going to the Apple store to buy the newest MacBook with their new credit. And that's not the way it works. My rule of thumb is to treat your credit card as if it was a debit card. There's no point making purchases that you can't pay off and end up having to pay the 15, maybe even 20% interest that your credit card is giving you. Question number 2, you should keep a small balance and to pay some interest to increase your score. So for this question, this is a flat out no. I'm actually not sure who came up with the idea that paying interest would mean that your score is going to go up. Although I think it does make the bank happy in a sense because you're now effectively paying maybe 15 or 20% interest for something that you've purchased and they're making money off of you. Question number 3, credit card applications will damage my score. So the overall answer is no. So essentially what happens when you apply for a credit card is the bank will go to the bureau and do what's known as a hard credit check. So this process does drop your score typically by a few points, but the credit score is not a static function. It's a continuous function. And as long as you're doing things, practicing, good financial habits like paying off your card on time, and keeping your utilization low, and things of that nature, as long as you're doing that, your credit score is going to recover. And I don't think a few points that drop because of the credit check will affect it on the long term. Question 4, you should cancel all of the credit cards that you're no longer using. So despite popular belief, this will actually lower your score. So when you cancel a credit card, it actually just gets dropped from your profile. So say you have a card you've used maybe for 5 or 10 years and you decide to cancel it, that 5 to 10 year history will be removed from your credit profile. And because of that, your average age of credit will drop and your score overall will come down as well. So there are other reasons why you might want to cancel your cards, and it would make sense. So for example, if there's an annual fee that you need to pay and you don't think that there's value for the card next year, that might be a reason where it's okay to cancel the card, as well as if you're getting declined for cards because you have too much open credit. So let's say, for example, you have 5 or 6 different credit cards with a total limit that's, 50 or 60,000, it's way too high. It might be an idea to either cancel the card or request a credit limit decrease for those cards to make some more room. Question 5, it's okay to use all of your credit limit each month. So I've kind of touched upon this before, but it's generally not the best idea to max out your credit limit, mostly because your utilization score shoots up and that's seen as bad credit behavior. And if you're a lender, say, for example, you've lent someone $3,000 and you're keeping a tab on them, it looks kind of risky if every month they're using all $3,000 that you've lent them. I think a general rule, myself included, is to keep my utilization below 30%. And there are going to be months where this is probably not possible. So for those months, I would try to pay off that balance as soon as I can. And that's it for today's episode. If you guys have any questions about your credit score or just any general questions, please feel free to leave them down below in the comments. Peace. So your credit score is a number that's used by banks and lenders to determine your credit